The email came in at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at my laptop for hours, finishing paperwork on a corporate espionage case that had taken me 3 weeks to crack. My eyes burned. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago. The converted warehouse space I called an office in Denver's Rhino district felt smaller than usual, the exposed brick walls pressing in like they wanted to tell me something. The notification pinged through my encrypted client portal, the same system I'd used for 12 years, designed for people who needed discretion and were willing to pay for it. I got these emails all the time. Suspicious spouses, worried parents, corporate executives convinced their partners were screwing them over. The usual parade of human misery that kept my lights on. I clicked it open without much thought. 3 things stared back at me. A name, an address. A single line of instruction. The name was Natalie Turner. The address was 847 Vine Street, Denver, Colorado. The instruction read, "Follow her. Document everything." My wife's name. Our home address. Attached was a cryptocurrency wallet confirmation showing a $15,000 advance payment. Already cleared. Already sitting in my business account like it belonged there. For about 30 seconds, I didn't breathe. Then my training kicked in. 12 years as Denver PD before I went private, and another 12 running my own shop. I'd seen a lot of twisted things in that time. I'd learned not to react until I had information. My first instinct, delete it. Someone's messing with me. My second instinct, the money cleared. I ran my usual tricks. IP tracing brought back nothing but a maze of VPNs that dead-ended in 3 different countries. The metadata had been scrubbed clean. I analyzed the writing style. Formal, almost clinical, nothing like the desperate, emotional clients who usually found their way to my inbox. This was professional work. Whoever sent this knew what they were doing. I thought about my old partner from the force, William Foster. Bill had a sick sense of humor and the technical skills to pull something like this off. We'd been trading dark jokes for 2 decades. This seemed like something he might do after a few beers. Hire me to tail my own wife as some kind of elaborate prank. I texted him. "Very funny, you twisted son of a gun." The email. Seriously? 3 minutes later. What email? "I'm at my kid's soccer game in Tucson, man. What are you talking about?" Bill was a lot of things, but he wasn't a liar. Not to me. I sat back in my chair and stared at my wife's name on the screen until my vision blurred. Natalie and I had been married for 11 years. We met when she was a paralegal at a law firm that hired me to investigate an insurance fraud case. She was 29 then, sharp as a blade, with this laugh that made everyone in the room turn their heads. I asked her out the day the case closed. She said no. I asked again. She said maybe. The third time she said yes, and 3 years later she said yes again, standing in front of 40 people in a garden in Boulder. We'd been through things together. 2 miscarriages in our first 4 years, the kind of pain that either welds you together or tears you apart. We chose welded, or at least I thought we did. I picked up my phone and texted her. "Working late, don't wait up." She responded immediately. "Already in bed. Long day. Love you." I checked her location on the family phone tracker, something we'd both installed years ago for safety, back when her job had her driving to client sites at odd hours. Her phone showed she was home, right where she should be. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't delete the email. I saved it instead, moved it to a folder I labeled unknown, and sat there in the dark until my laptop went to sleep. I told myself I was just going to watch the house for one morning, prove the whole thing was garbage, and move on with my life. Day 2, I parked down the street at 6 a.m. 3 houses away, in a spot with a clear sight line to our front door. I watched Natalie leave for work at her usual time, 7:45, like clockwork. She's a marketing director at a medical device company, the kind of job that sounds boring until you hear the salary. She took her normal route, stopped at the same Starbucks she'd been stopping at for 4 years, and arrived at her office building at 8:22 a.m. I felt like an idiot. I went home, took a shower, and tried to forget the whole thing. Day 3, same routine. Same departure time, same coffee stop, same arrival. Nothing unusual. Day 4, she left 20 minutes early. I almost missed it. I was adjusting my thermos when her car pulled out of the driveway at 7:25. I scrambled to follow, keeping 3 cars back like I've done 1,000 times before. Except this time, my hands were sweating on the steering wheel. She didn't go to Starbucks. She took a different route entirely, heading toward Cherry Creek. I watched her pull into a parking lot outside a coffee shop I'd never heard of, a place called the Copper Kettle, one of those boutique spots with exposed brick and handwritten menus. A black Mercedes E-Class was already parked there. Natalie got out of her car and walked to the entrance. A man was waiting for her just inside the door. I watched through my windshield as she saw him, and something in her face changed. Softened. Opened. He stepped forward and embraced her. Not a friendly hug. Not a professional greeting. The kind of embrace that says, "I've been thinking about you since the last time I touched you." My stomach dropped through the floor of my car and kept going. I don't know how long I sat there. 30 seconds. A minute. Long enough for my training to wrestle control back from whatever animal part of my brain wanted to walk in there and break his jaw. I raised my camera, the telephoto lens I'd used to catch hundreds of cheating spouses over the years, and started shooting. My hands shook. That had never happened before. Through the lens, I could see them clearly. He was mid-40s, well-dressed in the kind of clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Distinguished looking. The kind of man who probably had women smiling at him everywhere he went. They sat down at a corner table. His hand found hers across the surface. She smiled at him. That smile I used to think belonged only to me. I photographed everything. When I got back to my office, I ran his plates. The Mercedes came back registered to a Dr. Gregory Wallace, 47, listed address in the Washington Park neighborhood. A quick search told me the rest. Oncologist at University of Colorado Cancer Center. Pioneer of some new immunotherapy treatment that had made the news 2 years ago. Awards on his wall, papers in medical journals, the whole impressive package. This wasn't some random affair. This was a calculated relationship with a successful, intelligent man who probably had his pick of women. I sat with that information for a long time. Part of me wanted to drive home, throw the photos on the kitchen table, and demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything at all. But the investigator in me, the part that had spent 24 years building cases and following evidence, knew that I didn't have the full picture yet. Someone had hired me to find this. Someone who knew it was happening. I needed to know who. And I needed to know why. So instead of confronting my wife, I pulled up our joint credit card statements from the past 6 months. I went through every charge, every transaction, looking for hotels, gifts, restaurants I didn't recognize. Nothing. Natalie had been careful. But then I found something else. A second credit card in her name, one I didn't know existed, with statements going to a P.O. box across town. I spent 2 hours tracking it down, calling in favors, and when I finally got access to the records, I felt like someone had punched a hole through my chest. The card had been active for 14 months. 14 months of charges at restaurants I'd never been to, purchases from boutiques she'd never mentioned, payments to a hair salon that wasn't the one she claimed to visit. This had been going on for over a year, and I hadn't suspected a thing. Over the next week, I built my case the way I'd built hundreds of others. Clinical, detached, professional. I put a GPS tracker on Natalie's car, technically illegal without consent, but I knew how to avoid detection. I installed monitoring software on our home Wi-Fi router. I photographed and documented every meeting, every deviation from her stated schedule. The picture that emerged was comprehensive and devastating. Natalie met Gregory Wallace every Tuesday and Thursday morning before work, always at the Copper Kettle. They met twice a week for lunch at various restaurants, always on the opposite side of town from her office. And on Wednesday evenings, when my wife claimed to be at yoga class, she was actually at Gregory's townhouse in Wash Park. I photographed her car in his driveway. I photographed them through his windows. Nothing explicit, just enough to establish the relationship. I documented the times she arrived and departed, the patterns in their meetings, the lies she told me to cover her tracks. Each piece of evidence was another nail in something I used to think was sacred. But even as I built the case against my wife, I couldn't stop thinking about the other question: who hired me? I made a list of possibilities and started working through them systematically. Gregory Wallace himself? But why would the lover want me to find out? That made no sense. One of my former clients seeking revenge? Over 12 years, I'd destroyed plenty of marriages and careers. There were people out there who hated my guts. A competitor PI trying to destabilize me? Possible, but elaborate. Someone close to Natalie who knew about the affair and wanted it exposed? Her sister, maybe? Her best friend from college? Someone who disapproved? I investigated each possibility with the same rigor I applied to paying clients, but nothing stuck. Every trail went cold. Meanwhile, I found emails on our home network between Natalie and Gregory. The monitoring software captured everything that went through our Wi-Fi, and apparently my wife had gotten careless. One email from Gregory read, "We need to tell him soon. The longer we wait, the worse it will be. You can't keep this from him forever." Her response, "I know, I'm just not ready. Give me a little more time." Another exchange from a week later. "The timeline is getting tight. We need to discuss next steps." I read those words over and over, trying to decode them. They were planning to leave their spouses together. That was the obvious interpretation. Making a timeline for how to blow up both their lives and start fresh. My rage built like pressure behind a dam, but I held it. I needed to know everything before I made a move. I pulled Gregory Wallace's background deeper: employment history, financial records, property ownership. And that's when I discovered something that changed the shape of everything. Gregory's wife, Amanda Wallace, had died 18 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. The obituary described her as a beloved mother, devoted wife, cherished friend. Gregory wasn't a cheater. He was a widower, which meant the affair had started shortly after his wife died. And 14 months of secrecy meant my wife had been building a parallel life, not just sneaking around, but constructing something she intended to move into permanently. She wasn't planning to leave me for a married man. She was planning to replace me with a single one. I prepared to confront her 3 separate times over the next few days, and each time I stopped myself. The question kept nagging at me. Who is the client? I went back through my case files from the past 5 years, looking for anyone who might have both the motive and the means to orchestrate something like this. 3 names rose to the top. Thomas Bradley, a tech CEO whose wife I helped expose 4 years ago. The divorce cost him half his fortune and tanked his company's stock after the scandal went public. He had reason to hate me. Jessica Campbell, a woman whose husband I surveilled 3 years back. After the divorce, she attempted suicide. She survived, but she blamed me for destroying her life. Her therapist had to talk her out of filing a lawsuit. Daniel Price, an attorney who tried to have my PI license revoked after I caught his wife with her personal trainer. He had money, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. I spent a week running down each lead. Bradley was a mess, drinking heavily, living in a small apartment, his career in shambles. But he showed no signs of knowing about my situation. No contact with anyone in my orbit. Campbell had remarried, seemed happy, had no apparent interest in revenge. Her new husband was a therapist she'd met in recovery. They had a baby on the way. Price was the most viable suspect, vindictive, resourceful, technically sophisticated. But I couldn't find any connection to the encrypted email or the cryptocurrency payment. No evidence he even knew about my wife's affair. Meanwhile, things at home were getting harder to stomach. "You seem distant lately," Natalie said one night, sitting across from me at the dinner table. "Is everything okay?" I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for some crack in the facade, some tell that would betray the lie she'd been living. But she was good. She'd always been good at compartmentalizing. "Work stuff," I said. "Big case, complicated. You can talk to me about it, you know. I'm here." The irony almost made me laugh. Here, right. Here in body, maybe. Here with her phone turned face down on the table. Here with another man's touch still fresh in her memory. "I know," I said. "I'm just tired." Later that night, she reached for me in bed. Her hand on my chest, her lips against my neck. The signal I'd responded to 1,000 times over 11 years. I couldn't do it. My body wouldn't cooperate. I claimed exhaustion, rolled over, and stared at the wall until her breathing slowed and I knew she was asleep. I watched her in the darkness for a long time, trying to reconcile the woman I'd married with the stranger lying next to me. I decided to test the anonymous client. I responded to the encrypted email. "I've completed initial surveillance, ready to provide preliminary report. Please confirm delivery instructions." The response came within an hour. "Continue documentation. Full report required before delivery. Payment for completion will follow." The timestamp was 11:47 p.m. Natalie was asleep beside me. I watched her for any sign she'd sent something. Any movement toward a hidden phone, any flicker of wakefulness. Nothing. I checked her regular phone while she slept, scrolling through her apps and hidden folders. No evidence of her sending anything. Either she was using a burner phone I hadn't found, or the client really wasn't Natalie. The mystery consumed me. I barely ate. I barely slept. I tracked every lead, followed every thread, and still couldn't find the answer. And then, on day 17, everything changed again. I was staking out Gregory Wallace at the University of Colorado Cancer Center. I'd started following him too, trying to understand the full scope of his relationship with my wife, when I saw something that stopped my heart. Natalie's car pulled into the parking garage. I watched through my binoculars as she got out and walked toward the building, not toward a coffee shop, not toward a restaurant, toward the main entrance of the oncology wing. She was entering as a patient. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd seen. My mind raced through explanations. She was visiting a sick friend, she was getting routine screenings, she was dropping something off for Gregory. But the oncology wing. You don't walk into the oncology wing unless you're a patient or you're visiting one. I called Marcus first. He wasn't just my forensic accountant. He'd been a friend since we worked Vice together back in the day. "I need a favor," I said when he picked up. "Off the books?" "Ray, what's wrong? You sound like someone died." I almost laughed. "I need access to parking records at UC Cancer Center, last 12 months. Silence. Then, "That's not exactly legal." "Since when has that stopped either of us?" "Since I got 2 kids in private school and a mortgage I can barely afford." He sighed. "What's this about?" "I can't tell you yet. Just trust me." Another pause. "I'll see what I can do. But you owe me." "I know." He called back 3 hours later. "Your wife's been visiting the cancer center every 2 weeks for 11 months, he said. "Regular as clockwork. Always on Thursday afternoons." I couldn't respond. "Ray, you still there?" "Yeah." "Man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize this was about Natalie." "Neither did I." 11 months. She'd been going there for 11 months while I investigated corporate espionage and cheating husbands, while I came home and asked about her day and believed every word she told me. I did something I'm not proud of. Something that crossed every ethical line I'd spent my career trying to respect. I broke into Gregory Wallace's townhouse. I waited until a Tuesday afternoon, watching from my car until he pulled out of his driveway and headed toward the hospital. I gave him 20 minutes to get clear, then approached the house from the side alley, walking like I belonged there, just another neighbor out for a stroll. The lock on his side door was good, but not great. A Schlage deadbolt, maybe 5 years old, the kind that came standard with most residential construction. I had it open in under 90 seconds. Inside, the house smelled like sandalwood and coffee. His place was exactly what you'd expect from a wealthy doctor with good taste. Exposed brick, reclaimed hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves lined with medical texts and literary fiction. Photos everywhere, most of them featuring a woman I assumed was his late wife. Amanda. Dark hair, warm smile, the kind of face that probably lit up every room she walked into. She'd been dead for 18 months, but the photos were still everywhere. He hadn't moved on as much as he wanted people to think. I worked quickly, methodically, checked the obvious places first: home office, bedroom, any drawers or cabinets that might hold personal documents. My heart pounded against my ribs the whole time. This was B&E, plain and simple. If I got caught, my license was gone and I'd be facing felony charges. But I needed to know. I found what I was looking for in his home office. A file cabinet, locked, but the key was hidden in a desk drawer. Amateur hour. Inside, maybe 24 folders, all labeled with patient initials. NT. I pulled it out with hands that had started shaking again. Medical records. Detailed, comprehensive, damning. Diagnosis: Stage 3B non-small cell lung cancer. Date of diagnosis: 13 months ago. Prognosis at diagnosis: 15 to 20% 5-year survival rate with aggressive treatment. Treatment notes indicated she'd been undergoing immunotherapy, Gregory's specialty, for almost a year. There were CT scan results, blood work analyses, medication schedules. The documentation of someone fighting for her life. My wife had cancer, had been fighting cancer for over a year, and she'd never said a word to me. I sat down on Gregory Wallace's floor and tried to make sense of what I was holding. The affair wasn't about attraction or boredom or some midlife crisis. It was about mortality. Gregory had transitioned from her doctor to something more, and she'd let it happen because he understood what she was going through in a way I couldn't. But that didn't explain who sent the email. It didn't explain why someone wanted me to find out. I was about to leave when I noticed a handwritten note tucked into the back of the file. Gregory's handwriting, messy but legible. And we need to discuss the progression. New scans aren't showing what we hoped. We need to adjust the timeline. Timeline. That word again. I photographed everything and left without a trace. I went back to basics. The cryptocurrency payment was the only solid lead I had. I called in Marcus Webb, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on half a dozen cases. He owed me, and he was the best in the business at tracing money through the digital wilderness. This is going to take some time, he warned me. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. I've got time, I said. I've got nothing but time. 3 days later, he called me back. Found it. The Bitcoin went through 11 different wallets before landing in your account, but I traced it back to a corporate account registered to a shell company in Wyoming. What company? Sunrise Holdings LLC. The registered agent is a law firm in Denver, Mitchell and Associates. I knew that firm. Estate planning, wills, trusts. High-end clients who wanted to make sure their money went where they wanted it after they were gone. Can you find any connection to my wife? Already did. Natalie Turner established an estate plan through Mitchell and Associates approximately 6 months ago, created a trust, updated her will, the whole package. The pieces clicked into place with the sound of a door slamming shut. I called Mitchell and Associates the next morning, pretending to be following up on a referral. Through careful questions, I extracted confirmation. Natalie was a client. She'd visited their office approximately 3 weeks before the anonymous email arrived. 3 weeks. Just enough time to set up the shell company, arrange the cryptocurrency payment, and hire me to investigate my own wife. Natalie was the client. She'd hired me to catch her cheating. I sat with that knowledge for 2 days, trying to understand why. She knew how I worked. She knew exactly how I would react to an anonymous tip about her infidelity. She'd been married to me for 11 years. She understood my compulsion to follow evidence, to build cases, to document everything before making a move. She'd used my own nature against me. But the question remained, why go through this elaborate charade instead of just telling me the truth? I found the answer on her encrypted cloud storage, the same one she used for work files, protected by a password I'd cracked months ago during my initial investigation. There was a video file, labeled with my name, dated 3 weeks before the email arrived. I didn't watch it. Not yet. I wanted to hear her say it to my face. I set the stage carefully. I waited until a Wednesday evening, one of her supposed yoga nights, and arranged everything in our living room. Every photograph I'd taken, spread across the coffee table, financial records, medical documents, GPS logs, email printouts. The complete dossier of her betrayal, laid out with the precision of a prosecution exhibit. I'd thought about drinking to steady my nerves, but I decided against it. I wanted to be completely clear-headed for this. I wanted to remember every word. When I heard her car pull into the driveway, my heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I'd spent 24 years learning how to control my reactions, and I wasn't going to lose that now. The front door opened. I heard her drop her bag in the entryway, heard the soft pat of her footsteps as she walked toward the living room. She was humming something, some song from the radio probably, and the normalcy of it made me want to scream. She turned the corner and saw me sitting there. Her eyes moved to the coffee table and her face went white. No tears. No screaming. No immediate denials. She just stood there for a long moment, processing what she was seeing, calculating her options. I watched her mind work. I'd seen that look 1,000 times over our marriage, when she was solving a problem at work or figuring out how to handle a difficult conversation. Finally, she walked to the chair across from me and sat down. "So," she said quietly, "you know, I know everything." My voice came out flat, controlled. The voice I used in interrogations, not conversations with my wife. "Sit." "I'm already sitting." "Don't get cute with me, not now." She flinched but didn't respond. Her eyes moved across the evidence laid before her, the photos of her and Gregory at the coffee shop, the GPS logs showing her visits to his townhouse, the medical records I'd photographed in his office. "How long did it take you?" she asked. 3 weeks, give or take." "You were always good at your job." "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't make small talk with me like this is normal, like we're discussing the weather. What do you want me to say?" "I want you to explain. I want you to tell me how the woman I've loved for 11 years could lie to my face every single day for over a year." I leaned forward. "And most of all, I want you to tell me why you hired me, your own husband, to catch you cheating." Her face shifted. Surprise, maybe, or something else. "You figured that out too." "The cryptocurrency trail, Mitchell and Associates, the timing of everything." I shook my head. "You used the same attorney you hired to update your will. The same attorney who helped you put your affairs in order because you thought you were dying." "I am dying, Ray." "Then explain it to me. All of it." She took a breath, let it out slowly. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but I could see the tremor in her hands resting on her knees. 13 months ago, I went to my doctor because I'd had a persistent cough for 6 weeks. I thought it was allergies or maybe a lingering cold. He ordered a chest x-ray just to be safe. She paused, staring at some point over my shoulder. There was a mass on my left lung, 3 centimeters. They did a biopsy 2 days later. And you didn't think to tell me? I was going to. I came home that night. You remember? You'd made that pasta thing you do, the one with the sun-dried tomatoes. You were so happy. You just closed some big case and you were celebrating. I remembered that night. I remembered the pasta, the wine, the way she'd smiled at me across the table. I sat across from you, she continued, and I tried to say the words. I might have cancer. But every time I opened my mouth, I thought about the miscarriages, about finding you in the garage afterward, about how you didn't sleep for weeks. That was different. Was it? You almost fell apart, Ray, both times. I held you together. So this was, what? Payback? No. Her voice cracked. This was protection, the only kind I knew how to give you. She looked down at her hands. Gregory was my oncologist at first, just my doctor. But after a few months of treatment, after all those hours sitting in his office talking about mortality and fear and everything, I couldn't say to you. Something changed. He'd lost his wife to cancer 18 months earlier. He understood what I was going through in a way no one else could. So you slept with him? Yes. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. And then you hired me to catch you. Yes? Why? Why not just tell me you wanted out? Why this whole elaborate game? She finally looked up at me, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. Because I knew you, Ray. I knew that if I told you I was dying, you would stay. You would be noble and loyal and devoted, and you would watch me waste away for however long I have left. You would put your entire life on hold to take care of me, and then you would spend years afterward destroyed by it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because that's who you are. That's the man I married. She wiped her eyes. I didn't want to be your burden. I didn't want our last years together to be about hospital visits and medication schedules and watching each other suffer. I wanted to give you a reason to leave. Something clean. Something you could point to and say, she betrayed me, instead of, she died in my arms. That's not love. That's manipulation. Maybe. But I did it because I love you. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. You don't get to decide what I can handle. You don't get to make that choice for me. Someone had to make it. No. I turned to face her. We lost 2 children together. We held each other through the worst pain either of us had ever known. I thought we could survive anything. And you took that from me. You decided I was too weak to handle the truth. Me, who you've never seen break. And instead of trusting me, you let another man touch you while you slept beside me. The tears were flowing freely now. Ray, I would have fought beside you. I would have held you through every treatment, every setback, every terrifying night. That's what marriage is. That's what love is. And you stole that from both of us. She sat there crying silently, and I felt nothing. Or I told myself I felt nothing. There's something else, she said finally. What? The cancer has progressed. Stage 4, as of 3 months ago. The immunotherapy isn't working anymore. She met my eyes. I have 8 to 12 months left. Maybe less. I stared at her for a long time. You wanted me to leave, I said finally. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. I moved out the next morning, packed a bag, drove downtown, and checked into a hotel that charged by the week. The room was small. Bed, desk, bathroom, view of a brick wall. It smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's desperation. I didn't eat for 2 days. I barely slept. I lay on that thin mattress and stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of how my life had gotten here. My brother Kevin called on day 3. Word travels fast in families. I just heard from Aunt Carol, Who heard from your neighbor, apparently. What the hell is going on? You moved out? Yeah. You want to tell me why? I told him. The abbreviated version. The email, the investigation, the affair, the cancer, the scheme. By the time I finished, he was silent for a long time. Jesus Christ, he finally said. I don't even know what to say. There's nothing to say. Ray, you need to go back. Whatever she did, she's dying. You'll regret it if you don't make peace. Will I? Of course you will. This is your wife. 11 years. You're going to let it end like this? She made sure it ended like this, Kevin. That was her whole point. Because she loves you. Can't you see that? Everything she did was because she was terrified of putting you through watching her die. A dying person can still betray you. A dying person can still be selfish. She wasn't being selfish. Yes, she was. She decided what I could handle without asking me. She took away my choice. For 14 months, she slept beside me and lied to my face and let another man touch her. And she tells me it was for my benefit. I could hear my voice rising and didn't care. The cancer explains her fear. It doesn't excuse her choices. She made a mistake. She made hundreds of choices, Kevin. Every single day for over a year, she chose to lie to me instead of trust me. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. That's who she is. Kevin was quiet again. I could picture him on the other end, sitting in his nice house in the suburbs with his healthy wife and his 2 kids and his normal problems. He didn't understand. He couldn't. So what now? He asked finally. Now I figure out how to live with it. And Natalie? She made her choice. Now she has to live with it too, however long that turns out to be. I hung up before he could respond. I threw myself into the investigation again, this time focusing on Gregory Wallace. Not out of jealousy, I was past that, but out of something darker. Suspicion. The affair had started suspiciously quickly after his wife died. The scheme with the anonymous email was too sophisticated to be entirely Natalie's idea. I wanted to know how deep his involvement went. I found what I was looking for in his personal computer. More records of his late wife Amanda's final year, including references to an affair she'd had with her physical therapist in the months before she died. Gregory had known about it. He'd forgiven her. He'd stayed. But buried in his journal entries from that time, I found something else. She told me she did it to push me away, to spare me. But I stayed anyway, and I watched her die, and she spent her final days guilty and apologetic instead of at peace. I made her a prisoner of my loyalty. I should have let her go. That was the lesson Gregory had learned from his wife's death. And when he met Natalie, another dying patient facing the same fears, he'd shared that lesson with her. The scheme wasn't entirely her idea. Gregory had helped plan it. He'd encouraged her to give me an out. My wife had been manipulated by a man who thought he was being noble, using the twisted logic of his own grief to guide someone I loved into destroying what we had. I decided they would both face consequences. My revenge was surgical, professional, devastating. Phase 1 was legal. I hired the best divorce attorney in Colorado, a woman named Sandra Huff, whose reputation preceded her by about a mile. I filed immediately, citing infidelity with documented evidence. I didn't want Natalie's money. I wanted the divorce finalized before she died. You understand what you're asking, Sandra said during our initial meeting. You want to divorce a terminally ill woman. The optics. I don't care about optics. I care about severing this legally while I still can. May I ask why? Because she doesn't get to die as my wife. She doesn't get to claim that connection after what she did. I won't be her widower. I won't attend her funeral. I won't stand beside her grave and pretend we were something we weren't. Sandra studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll make it happen. Phase 2 was professional. I filed a complaint with the Colorado Medical Board documenting the inappropriate relationship between Gregory Wallace and his patient. Medical ethics were clear on this point. A physician should not engage in romantic relationships with current or recent patients. The investigation wouldn't end his career, but it would tarnish it. His hospital would likely require him to resign from direct patient care. The reputation he'd spent decades building would carry a permanent stain. Phase 3 was personal. I wrote out a detailed account of everything that had happened: the affair, the manipulation, the anonymous email scheme, the lies. I filed it with my attorney with instructions to release it if Natalie or Gregory ever tried to rewrite the narrative. If anyone asked why we divorced, the truth would be available. And then I wrote Natalie a letter. Natalie, I loved you. For 11 years, I built my life around you. I would have done anything for you, faced anything, sacrificed anything, endured anything. But you didn't love me back. Not really. Love trusts. Love shares burdens. Love doesn't lie for 14 months and then call it protection. You decided I was too weak to handle the truth. You decided to orchestrate the end of our marriage instead of fighting for it together. You chose Gregory's twisted logic over our history, his trauma over our bond. I don't hate you, but I will never forgive you. And I will not watch you die. You wanted me to leave. You spent over a year making sure I would. So here I am, leaving. Congratulations, you won. Ray. She called me after receiving the letter, begged to see me one more time. Please, Ray, just once, 10 minutes. I need to see you before… Before what? Before you die? So you can get your closure? Yes. Her voice was thin, tired. Not the vibrant woman I'd married. Is that so wrong? I almost said yes. I almost told her to find her closure somewhere else. But something stopped me. Maybe the memory of who she used to be. Maybe just my own curiosity about how this would end. Fine. One meeting. My terms. Anything. City Park, the bench by the lake, tomorrow, 3 o'clock. The place where we had our first… Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. I hung up without saying goodbye. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on the same bench where I'd taken her on our first date 13 years ago. We'd sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, watching the sun set over the lake. I'd known by the end of that night that I was going to marry her. Now I walked toward her and felt nothing but a cold, hollow emptiness. She looked worse than the last time I'd seen her. Gaunt, hollow. The disease was eating her alive now, and it showed in every line of her face, every angle of her wasted frame. She wore a scarf over her head. The chemo, I assumed, or maybe just the cold. I sat down beside her, leaving 3 feet of space between us, like strangers. Thank you for coming, she said. You asked. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the ducks glide across the water. Somewhere behind us, children were playing on the grass, their laughter carrying on the wind. I know you're angry, she started. I'm not angry. I'm finished. She turned to look at me, and I could see the tears already forming in her eyes. Ray, please. I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But I need you to understand that I never stopped loving you. Not once. Not even when I was with Gregory. You expect me to find comfort in that? I don't expect anything. I just need you to know. Fine, I know. What else? She reached out toward me, her hand trembling. I'm dying, Ray. I have months left. Maybe weeks. The doctors say it could go fast now. And I can't do it without knowing that someday. Maybe not now, maybe not for years. But someday you might forgive me. I looked at her hand. Thin, almost skeletal, with the dark bruises of IV lines visible beneath the papery skin. You want me to lie to you? Tell you it's okay? That I understand? That I forgive you? I want you to mean it. Then I can't help you. The tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. What we had, those 11 years, didn't they mean anything? They meant everything. That's the problem. I finally looked at her, met her eyes. I loved you more than I've ever loved anyone. I would have done anything for you. And you didn't trust me enough to let me help you through this. I was trying to protect. Stop saying that. You were trying to control the narrative. You wanted to decide how our story ended instead of letting it play out honestly. I shook my head. You have Gregory. You have your doctors. You have your sister. You made very sure you wouldn't have me. I made a mistake. You made 100 choices over 14 months, each one of them deliberate, each one of them a betrayal. She cried then, really cried, with the kind of racking sobs that shook her whole body. Her shoulders heaved. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She looked old suddenly, older than her years, like the disease had stolen decades in the space of months. Can you forgive me? She whispered when she could speak again. No. Can you at least try? No. Can you? She wiped her face, smearing tears across her hollow cheeks. Can you at least remember me kindly, the way I used to be, before all this? I thought about all the memories we'd made. Our first date on this very bench. Our wedding in Boulder. The night we found out she was pregnant the first time, dancing in the kitchen like idiots. The morning we lost that baby, holding each other on the bathroom floor. The 1,000 small moments that had seemed so permanent at the time. I'll remember you accurately, I said. That's the best I can offer. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. I understand. After a few minutes, I stood up. Goodbye, Natalie. Ray. But I was already walking away. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I had, I might have seen her sitting there alone on that bench, dying, abandoned by the one person who'd promised to be with her through everything. And I might have felt something I didn't want to feel. The divorce was finalized 73 days later. Sandra pushed it through expedited, using every trick in her considerable book to get it done before Natalie ran out of time. My wife, ex-wife, didn't contest anything. She signed every document without complaint, like she'd been waiting for permission to give up. I took only what I'd brought into the marriage. She kept the house. You know, Sandra said after the final hearing, in 20 years of family law, I've never had a client like you. What do you mean? Most people who come through that door are angry, vindictive, irrational. They want blood. They want to destroy their ex. She studied me with professional curiosity. You just want it out, clean and simple. There's nothing simple about any of this. Maybe not. But you didn't try to take the house. You didn't go after her assets. You just wanted the divorce finalized before she stopped herself. Before she died. Yeah. Can I ask why that mattered so much? I thought about how to explain it. Because she doesn't get to die as my wife. She doesn't get to have that claim on me at the end. I won't be listed as her surviving spouse. I won't inherit anything. I won't be expected to stand at her funeral and accept condolences. That's cold. Maybe, but it's honest. The medical board investigation concluded 6 weeks after that. Gregory Wallace received a formal reprimand for inappropriate relationship with a patient. The kind of black mark that doesn't end a career but follows you forever. He was forced to step down from his department head position at UC Cancer Center. The hospital's official statement said he wanted to focus on direct patient care, but everyone in Denver's medical community knew the real story. 3 of his former patients came forward with concerns about boundary issues once the door was opened. One woman said he'd made her feel uncomfortable during private consultations. Another described excessive personal questions about her marriage. Nothing criminal, nothing actionable, but enough to tarnish the reputation he'd spent decades building. I watched his fall from a distance and felt nothing but grim satisfaction. He'd encouraged my wife to destroy our marriage. He'd helped her plan it. He thought he was being noble, sharing his twisted wisdom about love and death and letting go. Now he could deal with the consequences. I heard updates about Natalie through mutual friends, people who couldn't help themselves, who thought I'd want to know, who didn't understand that every word about her was a knife in a wound that hadn't healed. "She's in hospice now," my neighbor told me one evening, catching me on my way inside. "Full-time aide. Gregory's there most of the time." Good for them. "Ray, don't you think maybe you should—" "Good night?" I closed the door before she could finish the sentence. I threw myself into work instead. Case after case after case, the same parade of suspicious spouses and worried parents and corporate executives convinced their partners were screwing them over. Business was good. Word of mouth said I was the best in Denver, thorough, discreet, relentless. The kind of PI who got results no matter how ugly they turned out to be. Ironic, really. I'd built my career on exposing other people's secrets. Now my own life was the biggest secret I kept. I started seeing a therapist. A woman named Eleanor Reed, recommended by a cop I used to work with who'd been through his own messy divorce. She had an office in Lodo, all warm colors and soft lighting, the kind of space designed to make you feel safe enough to say things you'd never say anywhere else. "Tell me what brought you here," she said during our first session. I told her. The abbreviated version, just the facts, stripped of emotion, the way I'd tell it to a detective taking a statement. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's quite a story," she said finally. "It's not a story. It's what happened." "I'm sorry, you're right." She made a note on her pad. "How are you feeling about it now?" "How do you think I'm feeling?" "I don't know. That's why I'm asking." I thought about it. Really thought about it. Numb, mostly. Sometimes angry. Sometimes, I don't know. Sad, I guess, but not in the way you'd expect. What way would I expect? You'd expect me to be sad that she's dying, that my marriage is over, that the woman I loved betrayed me? And you're not sad about those things? I'm sad about who I thought she was, the version of her I'd built in my head over 11 years. That woman didn't exist. Or maybe she did once, and she changed, and I didn't notice. I stared at a spot on the wall behind her head. I'm not mourning Natalie. I'm mourning the idea of her. Eleanor nodded slowly. That's a very honest assessment. I'm a private investigator. Honest assessment is what I do. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive her? No. Does that bother you? It used to. I was raised to believe forgiveness was virtuous, that holding grudges made you a bad person. And now? Now I think some things can't be forgiven. Some betrayals are too complete. She made another note. And if she dies before you've resolved this? She's going to die before I've resolved this. That's not a hypothetical. I paused. And I've accepted that I'll have to live with that. It's not the outcome I wanted. It's just the outcome we got. I still couldn't shake the question of Gregory Wallace's role in all of this. The affair was one thing. Two lonely people finding comfort in each other during the worst time of their lives. I could almost understand that, even if I couldn't forgive it. But the scheme, the anonymous email, the elaborate mechanism to destroy my marriage, that took planning. That took forethought. That took someone suggesting to my dying wife that the best thing she could do was make me hate her. I dug deeper into Gregory's past, not just his professional life, but his personal history. And that's when I found the piece I'd been missing. Amanda Wallace's final year. There were blog posts, buried deep in search results, where she'd written about her journey with pancreatic cancer. The early hope, the experimental treatments, the slow realization that nothing was working. And in one entry, dated about 6 months before she died, a cryptic reference to mistakes I've made that I can't take back. I followed that thread and found what she'd been talking about. Amanda had an affair too, with her physical therapist, a guy named Ryan, who helped her with the mobility issues caused by her treatments. Gregory had found out 4 months before she died. He'd stayed. He'd forgiven her. He'd sat beside her bed and held her hand and watched her fade away. But buried in his journal entries from that time, files I accessed through the same home network hack that had given me Natalie's medical records, I found the truth about how that had really played out. She told me she did it to push me away, he'd written, to spare me the pain of watching her die. But I stayed anyway, and I watched her die, and she spent her final days guilty and apologetic instead of at peace. I made her a prisoner of my loyalty. I should have let her go. That was the lesson Gregory had learned from his wife's death. The twisted wisdom he'd gained from holding on when she'd wanted him to leave. And when he met Natalie, another dying patient facing the same fears, married to another man who would inevitably choose loyalty over reason, he'd shared that lesson with her. You should give him an out, I imagined him saying. Something he can't forgive, something that will set him free. The scheme wasn't entirely her idea. Gregory had planted the seed. And my wife, terrified and desperate and already halfway into the darkness, had let it grow. 2 weeks after Natalie entered hospice, I received another encrypted email. My blood went cold when I saw the notification. For a moment, I was back in my office at 2:47 a.m., staring at my wife's name on the screen. But this message was different. Mr. Turner. Per my client's instructions, upon the event of her passing or entry into end-of-life care, you are to receive the attached video file. This message serves as delivery of that file. Regards. Mitchell and Associates. Attached was the same video I'd found in her cloud storage months ago and never watched. The confession she'd recorded before sending the anonymous email. I sat with it for 2 weeks. The file sat in my inbox like a bomb waiting to go off, and I couldn't decide whether to watch it or delete it. Finally, on a night when I'd had too much to drink, something I rarely did anymore, I opened it. Natalie appeared on screen looking healthy, vibrant, nothing like the hollowed-out woman I'd met in the park. This was recorded over a year ago, before the affair deepened, before everything spiraled. "Ray," she began, and just hearing her say my name made something twist in my chest. "If you're watching this, you know everything, and I need to explain." She talked for 23 minutes. She talked about the diagnosis, the terror, the isolation. She talked about sitting in Gregory's office listening to survival statistics and feeling her entire future collapse into a narrow tunnel of fear. "I couldn't tell you," she said. "I watched what losing the babies did to you. I held you through those nights when you couldn't stop crying, when you blamed yourself for something that was nobody's fault. And I knew that watching me die would destroy you in ways you might never recover from." She talked about the affair, how it started, why it continued, what it meant to her. "It wasn't love," she said. "Not the way I love you. It was understanding. It was someone who knew exactly what I was going through because he'd lived it. And yes, it was wrong. I know it was wrong. But I was dying, Ray, and I was so scared and I needed something you couldn't give me." She talked about the scheme, the anonymous email, the cryptocurrency payment, the elaborate mechanism she'd constructed to ensure I would find out. "I needed you to have a reason to hate me. Something clean. Something you could point to and say, she betrayed me, and I'm done. I couldn't let you watch me disappear. I couldn't make you go through that." She wiped tears from her eyes. "I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you to understand that I did this because I love you, even if you can't see it that way. Everything I did, all of it, was because I love you too much to let you suffer through what's coming." She paused, seemed to gather herself. "Goodbye, Ray. I hope you find someone someday who deserves you. Someone braver than me. The video ended. I watched it twice. I understood her reasoning, intellectually. I could follow the logic, trace the fear, see how she'd convinced herself this was the right thing to do. But understanding is not forgiveness. You loved me your way, I said to the dark screen. But you didn't love me enough to let me choose. I deleted the video. I poured out my drink, opened a new case file, another anonymous client, another spouse to follow, another person who wanted the truth even if it destroyed them. The work continues. It always does. 3 weeks later, I got word that Natalie had died. Gregory was with her at the end. Her sister, a few close friends. I wasn't among them. I worked that day. I worked the next day. I worked every day because that's what I do. That's who I am. And if sometimes, late at night, I think about what might have been. If she'd trusted me, if she'd told me the truth, if we'd faced it together, I push those thoughts aside. They don't help anyone. She made her choice. I made mine. The file marked unknown is still in my system. I never deleted it. Sometimes I open it and stare at that first email. Her name, our address, the instruction to document everything. She knew me better than I knew her. That's the part that still hurts. Everyone thinks they know what love means. They're wrong. Love isn't sacrifice. Love isn't protection. Love is truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She never learned that. And now, she never will.